Welcome to Wednesday Bible class, and Jesus encounters the man with the shriveled hand. Jesus goes into a synagogue. It's a Jewish community center. There's a man there with a withered hand, but he's silent. He does not ask Jesus for anything, but Jesus calls him in front of the crowd. This shriveled hand was likely some kind of nerve damage, or maybe some kind of muscular atrophy. Maybe he had an accident that somehow severed some nerves. But it caused him to have limited mobility, limited strength. We'll find out in one of the encounters that it's his right hand, so probably his dominant hand. So that means it's affected his ability probably to make a living, to earn money. Certainly, he does not have full strength and probably no use of that hand or arm whatsoever. The Pharisees are watching Jesus closely in the synagogue. Matthew is going to give us some background of this story and tell us that Jesus has already had a conflict this same day with the Pharisees about breaking the Sabbath. It seems like the Pharisees followed Jesus into the synagogue to see what else he was going to do on the Sabbath that they could consider as law breaking. And Jesus knows this. One of the Gospels tells us that Jesus knew their thoughts. And in spite of their scrutiny, he heals the man, breaking their traditional laws once again on the Sabbath. So let's read about it. We'll start out with Matthew. Matthew gives us the condensed version. I'm going to read you the background. I'm going to read you verses 1 through 8 just so you know what has happened, right? Because Matthew is the only one that connects these two stories. Luke and Mark just throw this shriveled hand man into the mix. But Matthew tells us what happened prior to Jesus going into the synagogue. Let me read it to you. This is beginning with verse 1 of this chapter. At that time, Jesus passed through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples, and who's in that group? Matthew, right there. Matthew that's writing this was in the group. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pick and eat some of the heads of grain. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to Jesus, "See, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." Listen to Jesus' response. A scathing rebuke. He said to them, "Haven't you read?" Now these are the readers. These are the smart people. These are the intelligentsia of the Jewish religion. And he asked them if they've read the Old Testament. Haven't you read what David did when he and those that were with him were hungry, how he entered into the house of God and they ate of the bread of the presence, which was in the tabernacle, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those that were with him to eat, but only for the priest. That bread was only for the priest. But one day David was on the run and he went in there with his mighty men and they grabbed some of that holy bread and they ate it, and that was against the law. But Jesus said, "Haven't you read that story?" And then he said another one. "Or haven't you read in the law that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple violate the Sabbath and are innocent? Because even on the Sabbath days, the priest had to go into the temple and work." So Jesus said, even the priests violate the Sabbath when they go into the temple to work on the Sabbath. And then Jesus continued, "I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what this means, 'I desire mercy and not sacrifice,' then you would have not condemned the innocent," meaning my disciples are innocent of breaking the Sabbath law. And then finally, he finishes up with this great statement: "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." What he said was, he called himself the Son of Man more than anything else. He said, "I am the Lord of the Sabbath. I get to make the rules about the Sabbath." And so then Matthew says this.
Moving on from there, he entered their synagogue.
Their synagogue. So that would be the Pharisees that are already after Jesus for their disciples eating this grain on the Sabbath.
There he saw a man who had a shriveled hand. And in order to accuse him, they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?"
So the Pharisees really kick off this encounter. Jesus has not had anything to do with the man with the shriveled hand. The man with the shriveled hand never says a word to Jesus. He doesn't come to Jesus. He's kind of like a pawn in the middle between the Pharisees and Jesus. And the Pharisees initiate by saying, "Is it lawful to heal?" Jesus has already said it's okay if you're passing through the grain fields and you're hungry to pull some corn off. That's not technically work, Jesus said. And so now they're going to say, is it okay to heal on the Sabbath day? Because that might be work also. What did he say?
He replied to them, "Who among you, if he had a sheep that fell into a pit on the Sabbath, wouldn't take hold of it and lift it out? A person is worth far more than a sheep. So it is lawful to do what is good on the Sabbath."
Jesus is so wise. And he's a master at giving these analogies. But look what he does. This doesn't mean a lot to us because I don't think anybody in here has sheep. But these people did. And yes, if they had a sheep and it was valuable to them, which it was, and it fell into a pit, he wouldn't leave it there overnight to see what would happen, to see if some bear or lion or mountain lion or some predator would come and get his sheep. He would pick up the sheep and bring it out of the pit, even though technically that is work. But Jesus said, a person is worth far more than a sheep. So it is lawful to do what is good on the Sabbath. So it's okay to work as long as your work is good. All right?
Then he told the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and it was restored, as good as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted against him, how they might kill him.
Wow, what a different type of reaction to Jesus. But you can see that Jesus, even though he's having these encounters and helping people and saving the lost, he's having this conflict with the religious leaders that is going to come to a crescendo next Wednesday night. That's right, because he's going to encounter Pilate and Herod Antipas. All right, so let's read the Luke version. Luke adds these details that are not in Mark. Luke says it's the man's right hand, so we know it's probably his dominant hand. Luke also says that Jesus knows the Pharisees' thoughts. And Luke also says that the Pharisees are filled with rage when Jesus heals the man.
On another Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and was teaching. A man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The scribes and Pharisees were watching him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath, so that they could find a charge against him.
Okay, that's what they're doing. They're trying to set Jesus up for failure.
But he knew their thoughts and told the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up and stand here." So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?" After looking around at them all, he told them, "Stretch out your hand." He did, and his hand was restored. They, however, were filled with rage and started discussing with one another what they might do to Jesus.
Filled with rage because Jesus saved another man from his lost condition of a shriveled hand. Now let's read our primary text, Mark. Matthew's already given us the context. Earlier that day, the Pharisees caught Jesus' disciples plucking corn on the Sabbath. But Jesus shamed the Pharisees for their ignorance of understanding what the Sabbath was about. He asked them, had they read the Old Testament? How David and his men violated the Sabbath but were innocent, and how every week the priests violate the Sabbath as they're working in the temple, but they're innocent. All right.
Jesus entered the synagogue again, and a man was there who had a shriveled hand. In order to accuse him, they were watching him closely to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath.
Okay.
He told the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand before us." Then he said to them, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil, to save life or to kill?"
Once again, they cannot answer Jesus. He has a way of silencing his critics. He gives them a question that they cannot answer. Either way they answer it, they're wrong. Jesus calls the man to stand in front of everybody in the synagogue. He puts the spotlight on the man, but the spotlight is really on the Pharisees. By exposing the man, Jesus is exposing the motives of the Pharisees. Is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath day? And like many other times, they could not answer Jesus.
After looking around at them with anger, he was grieved at the hardness of their hearts and told the man.
Look at Jesus' emotions. He's got anger because their hearts are so hard and they don't see the suffering man. They just want to know if Jesus is going to break their rules. And at the same time he's angry, Jesus is also grieved. It hurts his heart to know that they've made such a monument out of their religious rules that they cannot even see the restoration of the man as being valuable. They just want to know, is Jesus going to do it on the wrong day? They're not thinking about the man's restoration.
Stretch out your hand.
Jesus gives this man an impossible command. He can't stretch his hand out because it's shriveled. Jesus tells him to do the impossible. But what does he do? He tries. And he tries because he believes that Jesus can heal him. He tries, and this time when he tries, he is able to stretch out his hand.
So he stretched it out, and his hand was restored.
It was impossible, but Jesus told him to do the impossible. He believed Jesus. He tried to do the impossible, and he literally did the impossible.
Immediately, the Pharisees went out and started plotting with the Herodians against him, how they might kill him.
All right. And that is the end of Jesus encounters the man with the shriveled hand. It's very short.